5:40 stopped. One man was dead. The killer stayed on board. He checked his watch for the 5th time. And yet, the train didn't come. The man looked at his watch again 5 times in 10 minutes, his fingers tight around it. He stood near the end of the platform, away from the other passengers. His eyes moved fast. He checked the station clock, then turned his face away. Poirot and Hastings had just arrived. Hastings stretched his back. Poirot walked with short, even steps. "It's colder than I thought," Hastings said. Poirot didn't answer. He was looking toward the far end of the platform. "That man, do you see him?" Hastings followed his gaze. "Yes. What about him?" "He is nervous," Poirot said. "He is not waiting, he is watching." The man looked toward them for a second. Then he turned quickly and walked along the edge of the platform. He stopped near the last carriage. The door opened. He stepped inside. The door shut behind him. The train still hadn't come. The train wasn't supposed to stop here, not tonight. The train slowed. Brakes hissed. Passengers looked up. "This isn't normal," Hastings said. Poirot stood up. "Indeed not." The train stopped. Outside there was movement. 2 uniformed men walked by. A voice called out, "Temporary stop. Remain in your compartments." Poirot didn't listen. He opened the door and stepped out. Hastings followed. At the far end of the platform, 3 railway men stood talking. Poirot approached them. "Pardon," he said. "May I ask why the train has stopped?" One of them answered, "Body on the line, sir, about a mile ahead." Poirot raised a brow. "When was it found?" "Goods train reported it. Just passed through." "Who is the deceased?" "We found a card. Edmund Blackwood. Ran an antiquities business in London." Poirot turned to Hastings. "Blackwood?" "Yes," Hastings said. "Name sounds familiar." Another passenger had stepped out. It was the tall man with grey hair from before. "Did you say Edmund Blackwood?" he asked. The railway man nodded. "Yes, sir." The man reached into his coat. A silver cigarette case slipped from his hand and hit the ground. He picked it up quickly. "Sorry, that name surprised me." Poirot's eyes moved to the man's fingers. They were trembling. "You knew him?" Poirot asked. The man shook his head. "Number just heard of him." Poirot did not speak. He kept looking at the man's hands. They didn't stop, shaking. The cigarette case was back in the man's coat, but Poirot's eyes hadn't left it. Not all corpses lie still. 2 officers led Poirot, Hastings, and the inspector down the track. A lantern lit the way. The body was just ahead. The man lay face down. One arm bent unnaturally. A bag and an umbrella had been placed nearby. Poirot bent slowly and looked at the scene. He said nothing for a while. "Name?" he asked. "Edmund Blackwood," the inspector replied. "Antiquities dealer. Card found in his wallet." Poirot nodded. He leaned over the body. The boots were clean. Not muddy. No scratches. He pointed. "He didn't walk far," Poirot said. Hastings leaned in. "But the nearest road is nearly half a mile away." Poirot didn't answer. He lifted one of the boots carefully. No marks, no grass. This is not natural. He checked the hands. They were smooth. No dirt. No defensive wounds. No signs of a fight. Then he checked the scalp. "There's a wound here, above the left temple," he said. Blood had dried on the side and back of the head. Poirot studied the pattern. "Do you see it?" he asked. Hastings shook his head. "2 blood paths, one down the face, one down the back. That means 2 positions, upright, then flat." Poirot stood up. The train did not do this. The inspector raised a brow. "Are you saying he was killed elsewhere?" Poirot didn't reply. He checked the coat, then the collar, then the lapel. He found crumbs. Cake, he said. He looked at the trouser hem, pulled out some fibers with tweezers. Red wool, blue cotton, yellow jute. He placed them in a small envelope. Not found in fields, he said. These come from indoor carpets. The inspector stepped back. So he was killed inside somewhere? Poirot nodded. Yes. He looked at the broken glasses nearby. These were placed here, not scattered, not crushed by force. He bent and looked closely. They were stepped on, then moved by hand. Hastings folded his arms. Why would someone do that? To make it look like an accident, Poirot said. The inspector rubbed his chin. But why go through the trouble? Poirot pointed to the missing items. Where are the antiquities? He had none on him. No samples, no items, just papers. Robbery. Poirot didn't say the word, but it was clear. He turned to Hastings. There's more. But one thing is now certain. What's that? Hastings asked. Poirot looked back at the body. He did not die here, Poirot whispered. He lit cigarette after cigarette, each puff faster than the last. Piton sat near the stove in the waiting room. His leg was shaking. He lit a cigarette, then another, then a third, each one faster than the last. His fingers moved too quickly. Hastings watched from across the room. Look at him, he whispered to Poirot. He's not calm. He's trying to look calm. Poirot didn't answer. He kept his eyes on Piton. Piton opened his bag, took out a handkerchief, then put it back, then zipped it again. Repeated the same action minutes later. His hands stayed on the bag. He's guarding it, Hastings said. Poirot nodded. And not very naturally. The door opened. A station staff member came in. Hot tea if anyone needs. Piton stood up. Yes, please. He took the cup. Didn't drink. He walked to the other side of the room. Then back. Then sat again. Poirot leaned toward Hastings. He is acting. You mean pretending to be nervous? Hastings asked. Number, he is nervous, but not for the reason he wants us to believe. Piton took out a silver cigarette case, the same one that had dropped earlier. He fumbled with it. The lid shook in his hand. He almost dropped it again. Poirot stared at his wrist. You see that? He said. What? Hastings asked. The tremor. It's worse now. They both watched. Piton lit another cigarette. Didn't notice he hadn't finished the last one. He coughed, then got up again. This time he walked out into the hallway. Poirot stood slowly. Where is he going? Hastings asked. Poirot didn't reply. He took 2 steps forward. The hallway was empty. Piton was gone. The chair still rocked gently. But Piton wasn't in the room. No English gentleman leaves behind his hat, not unless he can't return. Poirot stood near the station bench. He held a grey felt hat in his hand. This was found on the last carriage floor, said the porter. Poirot turned it slowly. He looked at the lining. Expensive, custom-made, size matches the victim, he said. Blackwood? Hastings asked. Poirot nodded. No English gentleman would leave behind his hat, not unless he cannot return to it. He handed it back carefully. The body had no hat, Hastings added. Exactly, Poirot said. But his clothes had other things. He pulled a small envelope from his coat. These crumbs, cake, same kind found in waiting rooms, but not on a train, and not on a man who just stepped outside. Hastings leaned in. What about the smell? There was a faint chemical scent on the collar, Poirot said. Something artificial, possibly a drug. Drugged and moved? Hastings asked. Poirot didn't answer. He was thinking. He walked toward the platform edge. Sir, said the station master, approaching. Inspector Bradshaw is ready to assist further. We're holding the train until he gives clearance. Poirot turned. Is there any house or building near the place where the body was found? The station master paused. Just one. Describe it. An old cottage, called Elm Cottage, been empty for months. Poirot looked at him. Has it truly been empty? The man hesitated. Well, I have seen a light there, past few nights. I thought it was odd. Poirot's expression didn't change. I would like to go there, he said. Sir, the station master said slowly, you may want to know something. What is it? The man looked toward the field. There's a light in that cottage now. Poirot didn't speak. He just started walking. Glass doesn't scatter like that, unless it's thrown. Poirot entered first. Hastings and the inspector followed. The door creaked. The room smelled sharp like old smoke and stale alcohol. On the table, an open bottle of whiskey, 2 glasses, a plate of oat cakes. One chair had fallen back. A thick book lay open on the floor. Poirot walked over. He crouched and examined the glass shards. Glass doesn't scatter like that, unless it's thrown, he said. Hastings moved closer. It wasn't dropped? No, Poirot said. The pattern is too wide. The force was deliberate. He picked up a broken piece with a handkerchief. Then he checked the whiskey bottle. He opened the cap and sniffed. Poirot frowned. This is not ordinary whiskey. He dipped a finger, touched it to his tongue, then spat into the handkerchief. Chloral hydrate, he said. Drugged? Asked the inspector. Yes, Poirot replied. A sedative, not easy to detect after a few hours. Poirot now turned to the plate. He looked at the crumbs. Oat cakes, same as on Blackwood's coat. He knelt and examined the carpet. Red wool, blue cotton, yellow jute. He looked up at Hastings. Same fibres found on the body. So he was here? Hastings asked. Poirot nodded. Yes, this is the last place he stood before he was moved. Poirot opened the book. Pages on antique currencies. No bookmark. No note. Who was the second person? Poirot asked aloud. Who shared the whiskey? Hastings pointed to the chair. Whoever sat there, left in a hurry. Poirot stood silently, then walked around the room. He checked the corners. He paused near the back door. It was unlocked. He opened it. Outside was a small storage shed, a sack of coal, gardening tools. A rusted wheelbarrow stood to one side. Poirot knelt. The inside of the wheelbarrow had small red stains. He touched the edge. Still faintly, sticky. Poirot turned to the ground. 2 thin tracks ran from the shed. Crushed grass in 2 lines. He followed them. They led past the hedge, down a slope, toward the railway. The trail ended at the exact spot where Blackwood's body had been found. Collectors are like thieves, only with prettier words. Back at the station, Poirot sat with Hastings and Inspector Bradshaw in the office. A report lay open on the desk. No valuables were found on Blackwood, Bradshaw said. No coins, no artifacts, no samples. Poirot tapped the table. And yet, he was travelling for business. Hastings added, We found business cards, letters, appointments, but nothing physical. Bradshaw shrugged. Maybe the items were mailed separately. Poirot shook his head. Collectors don't trust post, especially when it's rare or ancient. He leaned forward. Collectors, he said, are like thieves, only with prettier words. Bradshaw raised a brow. You think he was carrying something valuable? I'm sure of it, Poirot said. He met someone before boarding the train. In the cottage? Hastings asked. Poirot nodded. They shared a drink. Blackwood was drugged. The other man waited. Bradshaw frowned. Waited for what? To see if he died quietly, Poirot replied. Then moved the body, Hastings said, and staged the scene. Poirot looked at him. Exactly. Bradshaw crossed his arms. What kind of item would justify murder? Poirot opened a small notebook. Blackwood was expected at an exhibition next week. Antique coins from the Byzantine era, extremely rare, extremely easy to steal and sell quietly. Were they insured? Bradshaw asked. Poirot shook his head. Not yet. He was transporting the samples first. Bradshaw stepped back. So the killer drugged him, took the goods, and dumped the body. Poirot stood. It's a theory, but a strong one. He paced once. The fibers on the body match the cottage. The cake crumbs too, Hastings added. The cigarette case, Poirot said softly. Dropped twice, both times during stress. You still think it's that Piton fellow? Bradshaw asked. Poirot didn't answer immediately. He's hiding something, but whether he's the thief or just a witness, we're not sure. He paused. But whoever did this, Poirot said, planned it. This wasn't emotional, it wasn't random. He looked at the map on the wall. Everything was controlled from the drink to the placement of the body to the missing objects. Hastings leaned back. Not a fool, then. Poirot smiled slightly. We are not dealing with a fool, he said. We're chasing a planner. Alibis are like mirrors, easy to crack. Poirot stood by the timetable board. Hastings and Bradshaw stood behind him. Piton claimed he boarded from Edgewater, Poirot said. Yes, Hastings replied. Said he was visiting his cousin there. Poirot pointed to the board. The 5:40 stops at Edgewater, but not for passengers this week. Engineering works. Bradshaw blinked. You're sure? Poirot held out a printout. Confirmed with the station master. Hastings frowned. So how did he get on? Poirot turned. He didn't. He was already aboard when the train left London. Bradshaw nodded slowly. That means his entire story was false. Poirot began pacing. He needed to be seen on the train. That was important. Why? To look innocent? Hastings guessed. To fake coincidence? Poirot replied. If he appeared after the crime, it'd be suspicious. But as a fellow passenger, he blends in. Bradshaw added. He dropped the cigarette case twice. Yes, Poirot said. Stress moments, both linked to key reveals. Poirot paused. Now, consider the cottage. Bradshaw leaned in. What about it? It was rented under a false name, 2 days before the murder. Name? Hastings asked. George Trent, Poirot replied. A name from a novel. He planned that far ahead? Bradshaw asked. Poirot nodded. He stocked the place. Tools, drinks, even cakes. To make it feel lived in, Hastings said. Poirot folded his arms. Exactly. He staged everything. Why not just kill him quietly somewhere else? Bradshaw asked. Because this way, Poirot said. He could make it look accidental. Poirot pointed to the map. Kill him in the cottage, dump the body, reappear on the train, pretend to be surprised. Hastings rubbed his face. It's tight, but it works. Poirot turned to Bradshaw. We have enough for a search? Bradshaw nodded. Yes, the rental papers, the false alibi, the fibers, it adds up. Poirot narrowed his eyes. Then we move now. You think he'll run? Hastings asked. Poirot didn't answer at first. Then he said, He's calm now, because he thinks we're slow. Poirot walked to the door. But he won't stay calm. We need to act before he acts, Poirot said. Every cottage hides something. This one hid murder. The floorboards creaked under Poirot's feet. He moved slowly, eyes on the corners. Hastings followed, holding a small torch. Bradshaw stood at the doorway, arms crossed. Poirot knelt by the fireplace. He touched a loose floorboard, lifted it. Dust swirled. Beneath, he found lint, ashes, and a clump of red and blue threads. Carpet fibers, Poirot said. Same type as Blackwood's trouser cuffs. He placed them in a pouch. His hands moved quickly, but carefully. Then he looked at the hearth. A pile of cigarette butts lay behind a log holder. He picked one up. "Same brand, Peaton smokes," Poirot murmured. "Too many for one evening." Bradshaw stepped closer. "So he's been using this place often?" Poirot nodded. "More than once, enough to feel safe here." He checked the side drawer of a desk. Inside, a crushed paper napkin, some oat crumbs, and a thin railway ticket folded in half. Poirot opened it. Dated the day before the murder. London to Edgewater. He raised it. Proof he was never boarding from Edgewater. He returned there. Poirot opened another drawer. He stopped, pulled out a small cloth pouch, faded brown, stitched with gold thread. He opened it. Inside were 4 antique coins. Hastings leaned over. "Byzantine?" Poirot nodded once. "Blackwoods." He looked at Bradshaw. "This wasn't robbery. This was targeting." Hastings whispered. "Planned from the start?" Poirot looked toward the far wall. Something caught his eye. The panelling had a faint scuff. Almost hidden. He tapped it. Hollow. He slid it open. Inside a flat envelope, yellowed at the edges. He opened it slowly. His eyes scanned the contents. A letter. Signed. He read half aloud. "Payment upon delivery. Items to be transferred before Monday. Risk acknowledged." He folded it again. Poirot didn't say anything for a moment. Then he turned to Hastings. "This, Hastings, this seals it." Peaton spoke of Blackwood like a stranger, but his hands told a different story. Peaton sat in the small office. Back straight, hands folded. Poirot stood across from him. Hastings leaned against the wall. Bradshaw stood near the door, silent. "You knew Mr. Blackwood?" Poirot asked. Peaton blinked. "Only by name. We were in similar circles." Poirot nodded. "And yet, you did not recognize him on the train?" "I wasn't sure it was him." Poirot tilted his head. "You spoke with him?" "No," Peaton replied. "Just passed him in the corridor." Poirot paused, then spoke quietly. "But you described him to the inspector. Grey suit, dark shoes, cane with silver head." Peaton looked down. "I noticed his style, I suppose." Poirot stepped closer. "You described a man you barely noticed. In detail." Peaton didn't reply. Poirot continued. "You said you boarded at Edgewater, but that station was closed." "I didn't know," Peaton said. Poirot nodded. "Yet, your ticket says otherwise. A return ticket, dated before the incident." Peaton's fingers began to tap. Quiet, but steady. Hastings watched closely. His eyes dropped to the movement. Peaton's knuckles were white. Poirot circled the table. "You never meant to board there. You returned there." He stopped in front of Peaton. "Blackwood knew you. You met before the journey, probably at the cottage." "I don't own a cottage." "No?" Poirot said. "But you rented one, as George Trent." Peaton's face tightened. "That's not my name." Poirot raised an envelope. "But your handwriting is inside. The delivery note. Signed." Silence. Poirot lowered the paper slowly. Hastings took a step forward. He saw Peaton's shirt collar damp. A bead of sweat rolled from his temple. Poirot spoke again. Calm, precise. "You smoked in that room, slept there, ate there, left fibres, left your case." Peaton looked up. His lips parted, but no words came. Poirot leaned in slightly. "You knew him," Poirot said. "The question is, why did you need him dead? It wasn't just a murder, it was theatre." Poirot stood at the centre of the room. Peaton sat still, hands in his lap. He stared at the table. Hastings watched him closely. Bradshaw stood near the door, notebook in hand. Poirot spoke quietly. "It wasn't just a murder," he said. "It was theatre. Piton looked up slowly. Poirot continued, voice calm. You invited Blackwood to the cottage, posed as a fellow collector, offered him whiskey. Piton didn't blink. You'd already mixed chloral hydrate into his glass. Poirot turned and walked a few steps. Once he passed out, you checked his case, found the pouch, took the coins. Poirot paused, then turned back to Piton. But something went wrong. He stepped closer. He woke up too soon. No one spoke. Poirot's voice lowered. He stood. You panicked. You grabbed the tablecloth, pulled it over his head, pressed, until he stopped moving. Piton's fingers twitched. You didn't shoot, you didn't stab, but you smothered him, quiet, clean. Poirot stepped closer still. You cleaned the area, hid the drink, replaced the glass, rearranged the furniture, then used the wheelbarrow to move his body. Poirot tapped the map on the wall. From cottage to rail. Dragged, dumped. You wiped down everything you touched. Bradshaw added, except the cigarette case. Poirot nodded. You dropped it twice. In the station, and again here. Hastings leaned in. Both times when Poirot got too close. Poirot folded his arms. You then rejoined the train, Saturday like nothing happened, waited for the body to be found. Silence. Piton's lips moved slightly. No words came. Poirot continued. You lied about Edgewater. You lied about not knowing Blackwood. But you knew everything where he'd be, what he was carrying and how to take it. Poirot pulled out the pouch. These coins, you kept them. Why? Not money, not power. Poirot watched him carefully. You just wanted what he had. You hated that he had it first. Piton's hand went to his forehead. Bradshaw said nothing. Hastings took a step back. Then Piton whispered, I never meant to kill him. Silence again. Poirot didn't speak. He didn't need to. He kept the past close, too close. Bradshaw opened Piton's travel bag on the desk. Hastings leaned in. Poirot stood still. Inside, wrapped cloth, leather-bound pouch, small metal box. Bradshaw unwrapped the cloth. A ring dropped out. Gold, thick, carved with a lion. Poirot's eyes narrowed. That ring, Blackwood mentioned it. Hastings nodded. Said it was on loan, Etruscan origin. Bradshaw lifted it carefully. Client report described this exactly. He turned the ring. Initials etched inside. E.B. Blackwood's, Poirot said. Bradshaw moved to the pouch. Inside, 4 more coins. Byzantine. Same set. Hastings let out a breath. He took everything. Poirot nodded. And carried it all with him, as if he owned it. Bradshaw opened the metal box. Inside a sealed note. Client letterhead. Transfer agreement. Signed by Blackwood. Dated 2 days before the murder. Poirot read it silently, then closed it. Legal possession hadn't transferred yet. Hastings said, So, technically, still Blackwood's property. Poirot? And now, stolen goods. He tapped the desk gently. Piton didn't just kill a man, Poirot said. He stole his future. Bradshaw frowned. Blackwood trusted him. Poirot nodded. Yes, and that trust killed him. Piton sat nearby. Silent. His jaw was tight, fingers twitching. Then suddenly, he stood, fast. Bradshaw reached for him. But Piton was already moving toward the door. The criminal always runs. Poirot always waits. Piton ran through the station door. Bradshaw shouted, Stop! Poirot didn't move. Hastings followed Bradshaw. But Poirot walked in the other direction toward the opposite exit. Outside footsteps echoed on the platform tiles. Piton turned left, fast, down the empty lane. Toward the far gate, a sharp voice called out, Don't run. He didn't stop. Poirot waited near the end of the platform. He checked his watch, folded his hands. Then he saw Peyton round the corner. Out of breath, jaw clenched, he saw Poirot and froze. Poirot didn't step forward. He just stood there. Peyton slowed, stared, looked behind. No one yet. Just Poirot. He stepped back. Poirot said, "You won't outrun the truth." Peyton's breath was loud, shoulders heaving. He moved again toward the other side. Poirot turned slightly. One step left. Peyton paused. Poirot's eyes didn't move. He spoke softly. "Where would you go? The coins are with us, so is the letter, and your name is on the rental papers." Peyton blinked. Sweat dropped from his chin. He looked left, then right. Nothing. No door. No train. No help. Poirot stepped closer. Quiet, calm. "You killed him, lied about it, but you didn't plan for this moment." Peyton's legs buckled slightly. Poirot raised a hand. Bradshaw and Hastings appeared from the back lane. Bradshaw moved in. Fast. Handcuffs out. Peyton didn't resist. He sank to his knees. Poirot just looked at him. Then, Peyton whispered, "How did you know it was me?" Cliffhanger. Poirot leaned in. His answer came next. Greed always leaves fingerprints. The room was quiet again. Peyton had been taken away. Poirot stood in front of the fireplace. Hastings sat nearby, watching him. Bradshaw leaned against the wall, flipping through his notes. Poirot began. "Greed always leaves fingerprints," he said. He held up the cigarette case. First clue, he dropped it twice. Poirot placed it on the table. Too careless for a cautious man, but the nerves gave him away. Hastings nodded. You saw his hand tremble. Poirot smiled faintly. Yes, and then the Edgewater lie, a closed station yet he claimed to board there. He picked up the return ticket. A man doesn't forget where he boarded, unless he was never supposed to. Bradshaw added, and the rented cottage, under another name. Poirot turned to him. Exactly. George Trent. Fake name, fake meeting, real murder. Poirot walked to the desk. Fibers on the body matched those inside the cottage. He tapped the envelope. The transfer letter. Blackwood trusted him, signed without fear. Poirot looked at Hastings. He saw Peyton as a friend. Hastings said, and Peyton saw him as a target. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Crumbs on the coat, same oat cakes from the cottage, glass shards that didn't scatter by accident, the smell of whiskey laced with chloral hydrate. He raised a finger. Everything arranged, calculated, but cold. He paused. Peyton is not violent. He's desperate, the type who steals slowly, quietly, but panic made him act. Poirot turned to Bradshaw. No weapon, no blood, just breath, smothered under a cloth. He stepped back, looked at both of them. Every step of the crime tried to hide the truth, but the smallest details exposed it. Poirot's voice softened. Greed doesn't need shouting, it just needs a moment. Silence. Hastings leaned forward. So it's all answered? Poirot didn't speak for a few seconds. He folded his hands, then looked toward the window. No, he said. Hastings raised an eyebrow. Poirot spoke quietly. Cliffhanger. And yet, one detail still troubles me. Even justice leaves shadows behind. The platform was empty again. Hastings carried both bags. Poirot walked beside him. Slow and straight. No one spoke for a while. They stepped into the carriage. Poirot chose the window seat. Steam hissed in the background. Not loud, just steady. Hastings sat across. Poirot folded his hands. You did well today, Hastings. Hastings gave a short nod. You saw it coming before anyone else. Poirot looked out the window, his reflection barely visible in the glass. People plan, people lie, but the smallest truth always slips through. Hastings leaned forward. You mean the cigarette case? Poirot nodded. And the fibres, the crumbs, the tremble, but more than that. He paused. The psychology. Hastings waited. Poirot spoke slowly. Greed is not loud. It hides. It makes men soft and desperate. Peaton wanted what Blackwood had. That was all. He didn't plan to kill? Poirot looked at him. He planned everything, except the moment Blackwood stood up. Hastings was silent. Poirot continued. People underestimate panic. It turns a theft into a murder. He reached into his coat, took out the antique pouch, held it lightly. This belonged to someone who believed in trust, and died for it. Hastings said nothing. Poirot placed the pouch back. The law will do its part. But justice— He paused again. Justice always comes late, and never clean. The train shook slightly as the engine hummed. Poirot didn't move. Even justice, he said again, leaves shadows. Outside, the conductor's whistle blew. Hastings stood, closed the cabin door. Poirot adjusted his collar. The train began to move. Poirot didn't speak. Hastings looked at him. Something still bothers you? Poirot's eyes didn't shift. He answered quietly, Yes. What is it? Poirot waited, then said, There was a second glass in the cottage. One was broken, the other untouched. Hastings frowned. So? Poirot shook his head. No prints, no trace, too clean. You think someone else was there? Poirot didn't answer. The train picked up speed. The station faded behind them. The light above flickered once, then stayed on. Poirot leaned back, closed his eyes. Hastings didn't press further. The sound of wheels on track settled into rhythm. The 5:40 rolled into the night carrying a detective, a story, and a secret no one else would ever know.